this is the time for SocEnv members. We've come now, Phil. This is us. This is our time.
The legislative framework, the mandatory minimums that we set are just that. We'd like those to be higher. We'd like those to be more stretch targets. But in the meantime, there's nothing to stop professionals, employers, architects, engineers, contractors pushing for better quality, greener buildings.
Welcome to the Society of the Environment EnvCast, where we feature special guests highlighting an environment top 5 each month. Each month, we welcome 2 environmental professionals to explore what they believe to be the top 5 things to consider within a particular topic. Topics range from climate to leadership, agriculture to AI, and everything in between. Look out for some curveballs in the top 5 each month, and remember, we can't cover every important thing within a topic. Our aim is to uncover how you can be part of the solution, to learn from the experts, and to sometimes think outside of the box as we strive for a sustainable future. Enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome back to EnvCast for another Environment Top 5, this time focusing on the UK government's Carbon Budget and Growth Delivery Plan published at the end of October. But first, I'm Phil from the Society of the Environment and your podcast host for today. As always, I'll be having a good chat with 2 registered environmental professionals and exploring key topics from different perspectives to expand our collective knowledge and ultimately make more impact. To look into the top 5 things for professionals across sectors to consider in and around the topic of the recent Carbon Budget and Growth Delivery Plan, we're joined by 2 Chartered Environmentalists. Their biographies are in the podcast description, but as an extremely short introduction, I'm very pleased to be joined by David Symons, Future Ready Global Lead for WSP and a Chartered Environmentalist via the membership of the Institute of Sustainability and Environmental Professionals, or ISEP for short. And also Saul Humphrey, who runs his own certified B Corp consultancy in the world of sustainable construction, and as a Chartered Environmentalist via membership of the Chartered Institute of Building, or CIOB for short. A very warm welcome to you both.
Hi.
Okay, so let's get straight into the top 5. As a reminder, this is all based on the impacts and the opportunities associated with the 238-page legally required Carbon Budget and Delivery Plan. We won't go through page by page by any stretch, but instead focus on the 4 key topics highlighted in the handy Unlocking the Benefits of the Clean Energy Economy document that was released alongside the big plan. So, number 1, I'm handing straight over to David to introduce the plan. What is it exactly and why should professionals care, essentially? But first, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself for a bit of context.
Yes. Hi, Phil. Nice to be with you. Thanks for inviting me onto the podcast. And thank you for also getting the acronyms out the way early as well. It's a lot of a mouthful of the Carbon Budget and Growth Delivery Plan. So I'm David Symons, and you've kindly given me a brief intro. I've had the privilege of working in the environmental sector for about 35 years and seeing the sector grow from being one that was small and nascent to now being a significant sector. The Carbon Budget and Growth Delivery Plan is a key document which basically sets out how is the UK going to deliver its net zero commitments by 2050. That's something which the UK, most developed economies, have committed to do. And the UK, as part of setting its net zero targets, has a series of carbon budgets. Those are 5-year caps on emission levels set out under the Climate Change Act, which was set in 2008. So carbon budgets provide a roadmap for the UK government to have a glide path towards being a net zero economy by 2050. So it's not we carry on as we are until 2049 and then just drop off a cliff. They provide a legal framework that is recommended by the Climate Change Committee. The UK government then legislates for them. we are at the moment in carbon budget 4. The UK has halved its greenhouse gas emissions since 1990, so we've made a lot of good progress on that. The Carbon Budget and Growth Delivery Plan sets out how the UK government is going to meet the rest of Carbon Budget 4, but also Carbon Budget 5 and Carbon Budget 6 out to 2037.
Okay, simple as that. There's a lot involved in that, I highly imagine. So how do these plans actually work? It's come through the UK government. Who would be out there implementing this kind of plan? The government have a leadership role, right?
Yeah, well, obviously government has a leadership role because they will put in place, in the main part from their perspective, the policies that will deliver the carbon reductions that are needed. So we're already well on the way to decarbonising electricity. There's a job to be done there with Great British Energy, Great Grid Upgrade, and the like. Similarly for transport, that's the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the UK today, for example. Government puts the policies in place, for example, around phasing out the sale of new petrol and diesel vehicles. In the same way, from a buildings perspective, government has its warm homes plan, will put requirements around minimum energy efficiency standards for leasing or selling buildings. Saul might talk a little bit more about that from a buildings point of view. So the UK government puts the framework in place, but of course, exactly as you say, Phil, the government is just one of the actors. There's a great role for business to also step up, and that's why it's a growth plan. This, as much as anything, which we'll maybe go on and talk a little bit more about, is if the UK government provides the framework, then that's for business to step up and to innovate in that framework and provide the private finance to support that as well. And of course, for us as residents, we aren't passive actors either. It needs to be a better way of living for us to want to buy an electric vehicle, put a heat pump in, waste less food, walk and cycle rather than taking the car. These are decisions that government can enable, business can support, but that's also down to us to also play our part because it's an easier way to live.
Yeah, some basics on societal living in there for changes to happen, but also there's some complex things in there as well, isn't there? But maybe we might unpack them as we go. Let's move on to subtopic number 2 as we go through our top 5. And explore the plan in a bit more detail, starting with the first area in the plan, energy security and lowering bills. I'll hand over to Saul to expand on this topic. But first, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself for a bit of context.
And yes, thank you for having me today. Saul Humphrey. I'm the next president of the Chartered Institute of Building, and I'm currently senior vice president. I'm a professor at Anglia Ruskin University in sustainable construction. And my day job is to project manage construction sites, projects, varying shapes and sizes, predominantly east of England, but I only do them if I think they're sustainable. In truth, there's no such thing as a truly sustainable construction site, but some are a lot better than others, and they're the ones that I'm trying to promote and progress. I don't want to take issue with anything that David's just said, because I think he's an absolute fountain of knowledge on this subject, but there could be a slight challenge around the sector that needs to be addressed first. And whilst many leap to transport, if I was brutally honest to my own sector, I would say construction can rival that, because it's in its broadest sense, the manufacturing of the equipment and the materials that we use on our construction sites, the delivery of those people and equipment to our sites, and then the impact of the buildings we build thereafter during their life, how they are heated, how they're cooled. When you add that all together, it's a phenomenal impact from construction in the built environment. So I think we need to stand up as a sector and say, right now, we're part of the problem. But if we could shift that paradigm, we can and must become part of the solution. And that's absolutely our message today for how these frameworks translate to meeting the Paris commitments that we've signed up to. Many would say 1.5 is already lost, but we must not lose the sight of 2 degrees as an absolute maximum threshold, or we're in serious trouble. So, enough of my nonsense or observations. Energy security and lower bills. A big part of how we manage this transition is getting away from fossil fuels. So how we construct our buildings so that they're better insulated, more resilient to stand the different conditions we're likely to experience in 2050 and beyond, but also so they're not dependent on fossil fuels to heat or cool them. So the switch to electric, to renewable power is essential. Heat pumps goes along with that, and better insulating, not just the new buildings that we start today, but all of those that are already out there. I think we estimate that by the 2050 deadline that we're aiming to, 80% of the homes have already been built, of the buildings have already been built. So we're going to have to retrofit the vast majority of what's already been built today if we're going to safely and properly flip to an electric-based heating system. And we need to incentivize and motivate people to do that. David's already alluded to measures around EPCs, but energy cost is a significant one. Right now, if you just switch from a gas boiler to an electric air source heat pump and do nothing else to your home, it's probably going to cost you more to heat it. So we need to make sure the insulation is right, the cost of electric's right, and incentivize the switch so that it makes commercial sense as well as environmental sense. We do want a livable planet after all. So dealing with the existing homes, I think, is not just homes, but homes and buildings is arguably more important than the new build. But to carry on building to old standards would just be crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I must admit, I like a little bit of healthy competition between what might be the most important aspects of the transition to focus on first, or where to put the money. Because if we're fighting it, if we're exploring it in that sense, maybe that it might happen quicker. I don't know. So interestingly, one thing that will link straight through to the next topic, which is to do with jobs and growth, and linked to what Saul just said there, we talk about heat pumps and all those kind of things, but then the skills required to be able to install all of those elements, whatever they might be, whether it's heat pumps, whether it's building houses properly, whatever properly might look like, you need the skills to be able to do that. And as much as we're talking about energy security and lowering the bills, you need the people in place to make that kind of thing happen, right? So I guess that must link through to energy and lowering bills as well.
Yeah, I think both of us could answer this. Absolutely essential. Jobs at the heart of this transition too. We don't want to just lose jobs in what was the old fossil fuel economy and have an economic slump as a consequence. The smooth transition, the retraining for those green renewable jobs of the future is really, really important. The skills to do that properly, so from a construction perspective, not messing up that retrofit, that fabric first approach to addressing a building. We'll know the skills and techniques needed to better insulate a traditional building are very different to those from a modern cavity construction. So the typology, the building form, there's lots to get right and very easy to get it wrong. So the training and skills to do that properly is really important. But this can really be a good news story, David, can't it? This can be a positive contribution to our economy, employing more people with new skills to deliver the jobs and I'd like to call it the sustainable development rather than the growth, but the economic benefits that we wish to see.
Yeah, I'd like to see that it's this is the time for SocEnv members. It's we've come now, Phil. This is us. This is our time.
Quite right. We like that sentiment. Yes, absolutely. And another thing that brought my attention just then was who makes those decisions, and linked to what David just said there about Chartered Environmentalists and registered environmental practitioners and so on, making those decisions on going beyond the regulatory requirements of how you build a new office block or whatever it might be. Who makes those decisions, and who's informing those doing the building and the implementing of what they should be doing and to what standard and that kind of thing. So maybe that's where professionals should be sitting.
Well, I mean, look, Phil, let me just jump in. I totally agree with you. I think, regulation absolutely has a backstop in terms of, gradually raising the bar. But, Saul has run significant businesses. The work that I do in WSP, the Future Ready program that I lead, that has grown from an idea to now helping us win 10% of our global turnover. That wasn't a regulation that started that. That was just us spotting an opportunity and innovating faster than our competition. Regulation is great as a backstop, but that's where the business role is, to spot and execute faster. And if we talk about jobs and we talk about growth, we are in an economic race, frankly, for green delivery with other parts of the world. I'm dialing in from Sweden at the moment. Sweden, for the last 9 years, has had a series of fossil-free roadmaps, sector by sector. How are we going to grow faster to deliver this? That's part of Europe's Green Deal investment plan, with a commitment to mobilize at least €1 trillion in sustainable investments between 2021 and 2030. This is the global context for growth in the UK. If we want to grow our economy, if we want to use net zero as that, we've got to get on with it. And that's why this is called a growth plan as much as anything else, that this is making the case for the UK to continue to use the green economy as an opportunity for growth, which we're doing very well. The green economy grew by 9% last year, according to government, ONS, CBI analysis. In the context of an anemic economy, who wouldn't want more of that?
That's a really good point. And David, you also mentioned that the legislative framework, the mandatory minimums that we set, are just that. We'd like those to be higher. We'd like those to be more stretch targets. But in the meantime, there's nothing to stop professionals, employers, architects, engineers, contractors pushing for better quality, greener buildings. I'm thinking about things like the BREEAM standards, the neighbours, the Passive House LEED, the highest platinum outstanding levels of aspiration of achievement do correlate to premium value buildings. They're the ones that are most desirable. They're the ones that are cheapest to run. They're the ones that will want to work in, live in. They're the ones that are most comfortable. They're also the ones that aren't going to become stranded assets. So positioning the whole delivery towards a green focused, more sustainable edifice makes absolute commercial sense as well as environmental sense.
Absolutely. And bringing it back to professional registration, because, I would. Even the Chartered Environmentalist registration is a standard. We would always expect and encourage you to keep on learning. It's all part of the journey to learn more and go beyond the standard and make even more impact. So now we're going back to David actually for the number 3, which we kind of already touched on, but we're going to have a bit more of a look into it. Jobs and growth, a topic I think David has already shown that he knows quite a lot about and is very passionate about. So over to you.
Well, this beyond the prospect of not cutting greenhouse gas emissions, not protecting nature, is so ghastly. The SocEnv members were talking to the converted here. But if we look wider across the economy, why wouldn't we want to be using secure jobs, jobs that earn more money than other jobs, and opportunities in the future for our kids to have great secure careers? That's what the green economy delivers right now in the UK. That's what the plan released by the government. That's why it's called both the carbon budget and growth delivery plan, is because this is an economic upside as much as being an environmental imperative.
Yeah, David, I agree with you. I mean, just imagine the amount of jobs that are created in renewable energy and the PV fields that we're going to need, the PV on our roofs, the PV over our car parks, the offshore, the onshore wind, all that grid transmission expansion, the retrofit and refurbishment of all of these buildings, all those homes, all these heat pumps that are going to be rolled out. We have to switch the way we build towards more low carbon materials. I mean, cement, steel is not great. We should be favouring more bio-based materials. We should be looking to try and use timber and hemp and something that grows and sequesters carbon. All that shift towards the green and the blue infrastructure, and not forgetting nature restoration. It's not just about carbon. It's preserving our ecological biodiversity interests too. With it, there's no future on a dead planet. So this needs proper alignment, some systems thinking to get interrelated, holistic, clear delivery routes. But I think there is a growing number of people wanting to do this, organizations, businesses, partners, and I hope some of you may have seen the National Emergency Briefing last week in Westminster. I think there is some ever stronger political knowledge to support it. And that can't come fast enough.
So Phil, what I'd also recommend, if you don't mind me jumping in, for your listeners, for SocEnv members, take a read of the Carbon Budget and Growth Delivery Plan. There is a roadmap of this is how the UK over the next 13 years is planning to deliver effectively a halving again of the UK's greenhouse gas emissions from where they are today. And if you want to keep completely up to date, take also a read of the Environmental Improvement Plan that was issued on Monday as well. Together, those give a framework of this is how the UK is intending to drive its environmental economy for SocEnv members and our businesses or members who are in an academic environment. There's our roadmap of where government focus and where that backstop is going to happen. That provides us the roadmap for innovation and skilling up and recruitment and aligning our services with those. It gives us a fantastic roadmap for the next 12 years.
And plenty of opportunities within, I imagine. Interesting, in terms of those people who are currently working in this, who are looking to play their part and have a role within this delivery plan. I noted that within the plan, net zero is mentioned 174 times, for example. Now, if you're going through as a graduate or as in your education at the moment, and you're thinking, what kind of job do I want? We've got two people here who work across different sectors in a way. WSP, you employ a lot of people, but not everyone has a net zero job title. What kind of people are working on net zero or carbon reduction or whatever it might be within WSP? Is it basically every job title that works within WSP? Could you give us a flavour?
So of course, within WSP, we have the privilege of being the world's largest environmental consultancy. So 25,000 of us, out of our 76,000 people in WSP are part of our Earth and Environment business. Some of those are very, very specialist net zero people, biodiversity specialists, and the like. So there are specialist carbon reduction, climate resilience roles within WSP. I think, as well as that, though, exactly to your point, with our Future Ready program, we aim to see the future more clearly. Climate is an important future trend. So also is the needs of future customers and future residents. Same also the future technology. So how will our schemes work in a technological AI digital world, and also resources as well. So thinking about the circular economy world, growth of biodiversity, water constraints, and the like as well. There, the opportunity is to get that out of a nice, interesting pub conversation and challenge and inspire every one of our people on the 100,000 projects that we're delivering every year to use their brilliance to advise and design for that future as well as for today. That's both we need everybody to have a working knowledge of the roadmap to zero carbon, which is why Carbon Budget and Growth Delivery Plan is so useful. That gives us the roadmap to say, hey, look, that's the world that your schemes are going to be working within if you're working in the UK. It's also as important to have the confidence and the skills to be able to talk well to clients about that, and of course to apply that on our projects, whatever those are.
Absolutely. And why not practice in a pub? I know pubs was mentioned just then. Why not?
Yeah, so there was a Stockholm Environment Institute ran a very good pub event up in York earlier this year, which did exactly that.
Okay, and if those of you who haven't heard of it yet, there's People Planet Pint as well. If you fancy meeting some more people in the vicinity of protecting the planet, whatever that might be, there are People Planet Pint events all over the country. SocEnv has nothing to do with them, but it's why would we not support that?
Very good, Sam. Couple of good points there. If I can just pick up on
absolutely.
Well, just my role at Anglia Ruskin University is Professor of Sustainable Construction. I'd like to think there'll be a time very soon where that title wouldn't be needed. Why would any construction not be sustainable? Why would that not be the focus of any course delivery to architects, engineers, project managers? It needs to be at the heart of what we teach, the sort of bolt-on extra carbon literacy bit, or the bolt-on be aware of this. I think needs to be a consistent theme through all of our teaching, all of our delivery, and all of our professional practice, so that this becomes less of the exception and more of the norm.
I think we'd struggle to disagree with that one. Absolutely. Right. In the interest of time, let's move on to number 4. We're going to cover the area of improved quality of life and health. And Saul, can you take us through this? What's this about?
Interesting, isn't it? Hands up, who doesn't want that? I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, of course, wanting warmer homes is where you immediately think we go to here. But we have to also remember that in a world where it's getting 1.5, 2 degrees is now, some are saying 2.6 is baked in, some are saying worse. We might be thinking about cooling our homes. I think we're certainly expecting a few more storms, more intense storms, and if we get an AMOC overturning issue, we could find some absolutely horrendous future forecasts. So the resilience of our structures to cope with what will be a very different environmental conditions landscape is fascinating. But we do want our homes to be resilient, and we have to adapt them to do just that. But having cleaner air, quieter streets, better public health, better, more green open space, reducing the high climate risk, creating more resilient communities and infrastructure is something we can deliver through a better built environment. So I think, the sector is at the heart of this, delivering this improved quality of life. And there's this amazing link between healthy buildings and healthy outcomes. Healthy diets can extend to that. If we could walk and cycle more rather than driving our petrol or diesel cars, that would be good. If we took less flights, that would be good. If we ate less meat, that would be good. So there's lots of things we can do as individual consumers, in addition to our corporate aspirations or policy legislative ambitions. I think there's a requirement to be quite consistent regarding this. But it is difficult, isn't it? We're probably, as I think you've already alluded to, David, we're in danger of preaching to the choir, of sharing this best practice with each other, when it's the entirety of society that needs to share and be aware of what we're talking about, and how best we sell it, how best we promote it, how best we encourage the change that we want. Probably does come from more about reducing the cost of living crisis or improving quality of life, broadening the benefits so that they're more easily understood and welcome than just picking on the negative challenges that we face if we don't.
Yeah, I guess you have from a public's perspective, the more tangible opportunities that come from this kind of a plan. You're not necessarily going to realise the impact of reducing carbon emissions from a steelworks necessarily as a member of the public.
I don't see that. I mean, you mentioned that the net zero term was used 174 times in the aforementioned report. there's arguably no more controversial a phrase right now in some political havens. So and a lot of people don't immediately grasp that net zero is going to give them a healthier outcome or a better quality of life, or ease their cost of living crisis. So how we navigate and position the language and the benefits to make them less controversial and more beneficial to all, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, this Phil has to be a topic for one of your future podcasts. I'm absolutely sure about using the language. I think sometimes I see this myself, that as a scientist by background, sometimes we're very comfortable talking about scientific language, quite advanced language, quite technocratic, and actually just talking about, as you say, Saul, lower bills, cleaner air for our kids, healthier lifestyles for family, as we can walk or we can cycle safely, rather than feeling we have to get in the car. This is a nicer way to live. Spending time in the countryside listening to birdsong. This is all a richer way when we're happier than, and we don't need to talk about net zero necessarily if we don't want to.
Well, right. Indeed. I'd have to have a think about that for our next few topics that are coming up. Why not? Now we move swiftly on to our final subtopic number 5, which is all about protecting the natural world, which we've kind of just stumbled across there. We're going to explore this area a little bit more. We haven't got a designated person for this one, but who would like to start?
Well, I'll pick up this for a start if you like, Phil. I mean, it's I suppose in some respects this is super in the mind with, as we mentioned earlier in the recording, the Environmental Improvement Plan just published as well. In the context of greenhouse gases, nature is absolutely intrinsic. And if I give you a fantastic example from Telford, we had the privilege of working with Shropshire Wildlife Trust on restoring a lowland peat moor called the Marches Mosses. It was one of Institution of Civil Engineers projects of the year. So this is a scheme that restored a lowland peat moor in the catchment of Telford. It's locked up carbon. It's created a wonderful community resource for wildlife. Amazing, and it's giving flood protection to Telford downstream in the catchment. And there's just a great example of how we can protect our natural world, save carbon, and just create a wonderful scheme for the community, which is cheaper than using a lot of concrete in a traditional engineered flood alleviation approach. So, yeah, there is so much opportunity for us here. Nature is the foundation of our well-being. It's the foundation of our economy. It's critical for communities. So, the upside is enormous. The downside, we could argue that we're in more of a nature emergency than a climate crisis. The downside of biodiversity loss and the like is too horrible to contemplate. So that's why programs like the Environmental Improvement Plan in the round give us, again, just a really nice forward guide, if well implemented, on how we can reverse nature loss and be at the heart of protecting our natural world.
Yeah, and really important here as well, because the UK is one of the most nature depleted countries on the planet. We haven't done this very well. We do need to restore our peatlands, our wetlands, plant more trees, create more woodlands. We've got to think about our marine and coastal protection in a changing world. We're going to be facing a need to adapt more. I hate to use terms like coastal retreat or rollback, but with rising sea levels, with greater numbers of storms, we've got some real challenges on the horizon. But equally, the way we build things right now, with the advent of biodiversity net gain as a concept, every development could be a positive to biodiversity, and needn't just achieve the minimum that's now a mandatory requirement. It could go beyond. So using those nature-based solutions strengthening our ecosystems, reducing species decline, keeping within those planetary boundaries is, I think, so very important. Tipping points can be initiated all too easily. We know many authors have talked of this, but reversing from a tipping point, I think, is far, far harder than avoiding one.
Maybe, Saul, actually, if we talk about tipping points, we can also talk about the opportunity of positive tipping points. Absolutely. As well. Yeah. So just in a water environment, I know a number of water companies have spoken about using nature-based systems for flood protection instead of being the trial as being this is the first choice that they go to, and then they only use a fully concrete engineered approach as the exception. There's your opportunity for tipping point. There's the opportunity for innovation. In WSP, we're working hard on that as well. But that's a huge innovation opportunity. It's also a huge challenge as well. But there's your positive tipping point. If together as SocEnv members, we can support delivery of that.
Yeah, it's something I wrestle with a lot. Unless we find the positive societal tipping point that this podcast is perhaps alluding to, those positive tipping points that Malcolm Gladwell, Tim Lenton, others have spoken more eloquently than me about, then I think we face the worst possible scenarios of those negative climate biodiversity tipping points that we don't want to discuss anymore today. We're at a point of choice. It's one or the other.
Absolutely. On the topic of speaking beyond the SocEnv members or registrants, how can environmental professionals lead the way in terms of working together with other environmental professionals, but also with other sectors, other disciplines, to make these projects, like David mentioned, make them happen? Because the project you mentioned would, in terms of a civil engineering award, it's not the kind of project necessarily you'd think of in terms of a civil engineering award. How do they happen? How do they come about? How can professionals instigate that happening?
I think SocEnv has a wonderful role because actually, if we look at your accredited member bodies, Phil, that is a really big part of the UK's economy and the UK. So I think SocEnv has a tremendous role within WSP. Case studies are fantastic. Being able to bring different case studies from our brilliant teams across the world is hugely powerful. That's an opportunity for us that maybe government doesn't see quite so much. I think also that's the opportunity for us to, WSP as a big company, the opportunity to also for us to share experiences, practical experiences, positive case studies is a wonderful way we can do that as individuals and across our networks.
Yeah, agreed. What we shouldn't have is any negative examples. I think we've all got this moral compass, this ethical obligation to think about the jobs we take on and how we deliver them. So celebrating the best practice is something, of course, we should be doing. But we shouldn't be quietly doing a job that we shouldn't have done the wrong way or the wrong materials for the wrong sector and think we can get away with it. I think we've got an obligation now to only deliver sustainable outcomes.
Absolutely. And just before we finish, just because David's on the call mainly, I'm going to mention Pledge to Net Zero, because that's a fantastic initiative that WSP and David and Society for the Environment have been working on for a long time with countless other partners involved. And I guess the plan like this points towards an initiative like Pledge to Net Zero to come together to make even more of a difference, right?
Well, thank you, Bill, for mentioning it. That's very kind. Yeah, so Pledge to Net Zero was set up to help the environmental sector take fast action on its own greenhouse gas emissions, and also to be thinking more widely about how can the environmental sector totally align our work with a positive net zero economy as well. So yeah, it's a very light admin scheme. We've now got 180 members from large to small. Pledgetonetzero.org. We'd warmly welcome other members to get involved.
Absolutely. And I promise my last point, but bringing Saul back into the equation, CIOB, and you're very well connected there, is one of the fastest growing in terms of numbers of chartered environmentalists as a percentage at the moment. Why do you think that is, and what kind of role do you think those professionals can play in this kind of a plan? Big question.
Good question. Chartered Institute are building circa 52,000 members across 100 countries. I'm delighted that more and more of our members are recognizing the benefits of also being a chartered environmentalist. So important. I have been for decades, and it's kind of almost unthinkable not to align the two. As I said at the very start of this conversation, I think the construction built environment impact on our net zero biodiversity journey is incredibly significant. So having professionals at the heart of that understand the environmental impacts as well as bricks and mortar, cranes and diggers is crucial. So I'm so pleased that so many more of our members are taking up that opportunity, because it's one we can't afford to miss.
Well, speaking of positive stories, that was a nice one to end with. So thank you very much to our guests today, Saul and David. We've covered a lot, as we normally do on EnvCast. If you, the listener, have ideas of what could have been in this episode, which again could have been anything really, covering the carbon delivery and growth plan top 5, let us know in the YouTube comments. We're keen to keep this conversation going, and if SocEnv could help any more, as David alluded to, then we're always open to ideas. And finally, please check out any links and resources in the podcast description to keep learning. Thank you again to our guests today, and I will see you in the next episode next month, which will be 2026, would you believe? If you've made it this far, please remember to subscribe wherever you're listening to this episode so you don't miss the next one. Also, rate our podcast and leave a comment to help us reach more people. Thank you very much for listening or watching on YouTube. We look forward to the next episode next month. See you then.